Hi, it's Glenn Livingston, and I'd like to talk to you about the single most important thing, in my opinion, that you can do to improve your AdWords return on investment. And that is to get a hyper-responsive focus on the single most important keyword in your market. Because in my experience, what happens to most marketers, and I've seen hundreds of AdWords accounts, is that they get stuck in the keyword candy store. And because every keyword is a conversation online, I'll show you what I mean in a second. Because every keyword is a different conversation that represents a different set of language and concerns and objections and goals and desires. Without that focus on what your dead center bullseye keyword is, you don't really know what conversation you're marketing to. And if you don't know what conversation you're marketing to, you don't really know what competitors are doing best and who to emulate and who to avoid. And everything looks like one big buzzing, booming confusion. So let's just talk about taking one baby step, a very powerful baby step in the right direction out of the confusion and towards your hyper-responsive market. Now, let's say that I'm selling salmon. Let's say I'm selling wild salmon. So I'm going to type wild salmon into Google. And what you'll notice is that there's a set of ads, mostly about wild salmon on the right. And on the left, there's the first site is about farm salmon versus wild salmon, and which one is better, and save our wild salmon. And the whole conversation is really about wild salmon. But if I were to type in the keyword salmon, I'm getting an entirely different conversation, right? I mean, wild salmon intrudes, there's a bit of an overlap, but the sites that Google ranks on top are salmon recipes, more salmon recipes, something about the safety of the shorelines for salmon, and Alaskan salmon, where not as narrowly defined on wild salmon as if we typed in wild salmon, and that's not any big surprise. Now, here's where this gets interesting. I'm going to go back to the home page, and let's go to the Google keyword tool. And if you go to the Google keyword tool and you type in the word wild salmon, you're going to get a host of keywords. And what you'll see is, let's say we've got about 50,000 searches a month on wild salmon. What most people will do is they'll right away proceed to pick every keyword that they could make money with. And this is what I call the keyword candy store. It's kind of like you're let loose in a candy store and there's nobody there to stop you. Mom's not there with you to stop you from eating too many keywords. And a wild salmon marketer might say, well, okay, that's 50,000 searches a month, and if I get 2% of them to my site every month, that's only a few hundred visitors, right? I don't know if that's good enough for me. That's not enough sales, so I'm going to have to get some more keywords. Then they go all the way down all these other keywords, and they go down to the other relevant keywords to consider, and they see, wow, salmon has 3 million searchers. But now remember, that's a different conversation. And so they're encountering this trade-off between volume and relevance, and they're looking at all these other keywords: smoked salmon, salmon recipes. Could I sell wild salmon to people that are looking for salmon recipes? Probably, to a lower percentage of those as opposed to people searching specifically for wild salmon, right? And then they start gathering all these keywords, and they'll get even further, and they'll go out to fish recipes, because they'll say, well, I could sell wild salmon to people looking for fish recipes, right? And they'll go to look for fish recipes. And what happens is, now they're going to gather keywords about fish recipes, and they're starting to have a little bit of anxiety that maybe they're going too far afield, but because of this trade-off between volume and relevancy, they think that they have to go further, and sometimes they do. If we start pulling all of these fish recipes, and what I find with most accounts that I've looked at is that they just don't know when to stop expanding. It's like you're working with an archery target and you don't know where the center is, and you don't know how far to go. And the problem with that is, because every keyword is a different conversation, if you start trying to optimize your site for, you can't optimize your site for both the conversation on salmon and on wild salmon, because as we saw, the problem is that these are different conversations. So if you optimize your conversation to convert people looking for salmon, you're going to lose a percentage of the people that you could have gotten if you convinced them that your site was the absolute